This podcast is a live action role play for entertainment purposes only.
Iran has already said that if they're in war with us, they would take down our power grid. It's in their doctrine. It's in their written military doctrine. And somebody once told, we had a study here in the United States, it's public, that said that there were 9 critical substations, power substations, that were taken down. The cascading failures would cause our entire power grid to fail. This was told to the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And his reply was, I've got sleeper cells in America. We've already got 20 of them targeted. I tell you what, we now know that streaming across, I heard a guy who was involved in border security speaking at another teleconference I was on, one of my security grid teleconferences that I attend. He said that there are people from 150 nations coming across our southern border right now. With all the prospects for war, with all the food shortage problems coming up, it is really time to think real hard about prepping for the long term, for having long-term food storage. And there's nothing better at all than what you find at prepwithgreg.com through My Patriot Supply. They have simply the best range of supplies for long-term food storage of anybody. And right now we got a special, $150 off a 3-month supply, which gives you 6 of these buckets, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with 2,000 calories a day. A deal that definitely make you a winner, because this is stuff that lasts 25 years. You get 21 varieties. The weight of this is 120 pounds for all 6 buckets. But each bucket is very lightweight, actually. You can easily carry this stuff, store it, bug out with it, bury it in a cache. It's easy to deal with. So please consider this for your own self, for your family. And if you want to find more of the stuff that My Patriot Supply has, just click on the logo right there, and it takes you into their store. And I still get credit. You get water filtration. You got all kind of emergency survival supplies here that you need to look into for you and your family. Treatment for water, solar battery extenders, all kind of good stuff here, my friends. You really, really, really need to look at what they've got. And here's the number 10 cans for long-term food storage, all kind of good stuff here. Oh yeah, they also have meat, high protein selections available too. So there's a lot of things you can choose from. Water filtration, survival coffee, and that's the most important thing, isn't it? Air purification, quite a few deals here, guys. My friends, check them out. Check them out. And I'm going to stop the share here, but I just want to say, go to prepwithgreg.com. Once again, you get $150 off for a 3-month supply and $50 off for a 1-month supply if you can't afford that. And look, those prices may look high, but it's less than $3 a meal. So check it out. It's really a deal.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Rex Bear. How the heck are you? Beautiful day today out here in Southern Colorado. Greg, it is great to see you. I know that you're dealing with some opportunities right now, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule, even with what you're going through, to spend time with us here. How are you?
Well, considering I got the bug, at least I'm talking. I might cough a little bit, but if that's all, then we're good.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep that down. I've been getting better. Hit me like a gravel truck Monday, but I seem to be getting better faster. Okay, so Rex, we got a lot going on in the world. We were talking about some of that, the risk to our power grid, and just our last video that we did here. And I've got to step it up here a little bit. Everybody knows about Russia and everything going on with Russia, and everybody's concerned about China. But something I cover occasionally is Iran. And Iran's a lot bigger deal than a lot of people think. And we may be on the precipice of a war with Iran. What a lot of people don't realize is that last week, when Biden was in Israel, he signed a joint pledge to deny Iran nuclear weaponry. He signed this pledge with Israel. So what they did is President Joe Biden, Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid, reiterated once again, that their anti-Iran positions, the position for their joint declaration to keep Iran from acquiring these nuclear weapons. And the key thing in that is that the United States actually said that they would use all elements of national power available to deny Iran the ability to arm itself with nuclear weapons. Now, that's a big statement. All elements of national power available. Now, that begins with diplomacy, but that ends with nuclear weapons. That's, if you say all things, that's the whole spectrum. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that we would nuke Iran if need be? I don't know what that means. We do have those nuclear bunker busters. They may be targets there, but that's a big statement, and it brings in a lot more risk than a lot of people think, because Iran is not a little. It's nothing like Iraq. It's nothing like Iraq. And in fact, the president of Iran had a lot to say about it. His name is Ibrahim, which is Arabic for Abraham. It's the same name. They just call it Ibrahim. Sometimes you spell the I, sometimes the E. Ibrahim Rashi. He said that the Islamic Republic will not accept any insecurity or crisis in the region. So that was his claim about it. But he went on to say a lot more. He said it would be a mistake if Washington was to make these kind of moves. And they would meet with a harsh and regrettable response. He went on to say this. Pardon me. But he went on to say, the great nation of Iran will not accept any insecurity or crisis in the region. I just said that. But he added further, and Washington and its allies know that any mistake will be met by harsh and regrettable response from Iran. But the most telling things he said is this. He added, Islamic Iran is stronger than ever, and the power of the Americans is weaker than ever, and they know that the project of maximum pressure on Iran has failed, but they are repeating this experience. So that kind of struck me. He says that Iran is stronger than ever, and America is weaker than ever. That is the perception from so much of the world. That's what I think has prompted Russia to act. That's what's maybe prompting China to act. It may prompt North Korea to act. Maybe this is why the world is coming unglued, is this perception of American weakness. And you know, it may be a lot to do with the strength of the executive and at the top of our government. You know, you've got to project strength. We've got a lot of strength. We have a big military. But you know, it's if we act like we don't know how to use it, now we could be stronger than we are. We have let our guard down in a lot of areas, and I've talked about that before. Dr. Peter Vincent Price talked about it. I've covered it on my channel. I think we discussed that last week, maybe. I don't recall exactly. I remember talking about Hardened stuff, but that's a very telling thing for them to say. And I want to probably share a Google Earth image. There are really 2 or 3 things about this that really needs to grab people's attention. Can I share? Let's see myself.
Absolutely.
There we go. All right. This is the state of Iran. This is Iraq. The storming Norman, we stormed right through Iraq, as you might remember, back in 20 years ago, 22 years ago, and before. The son was there in that last engagement. Now, look at this. This is a very flat country. Iran is very rugged and mountainous. Iran has a far larger army, far better equipped, far better technology. They're far more advanced today than they were back when Iraq and Iran fought each other.
They've done a lot of investment in technology. There's a lot of really brilliant people in Iran. And to get to the capital, Tehran, you got to get all the way up to here. You got a lot of mountains to cross. Of course, missiles, you get there, you get troops there. It's a whole different matter. So Iran is no pushover by any means. Iran has a very strong navy, actually. Iran has may already have nukes. But here's geographically the most sensitive thing. It's this little strait right here. Iran could add these waters in the Persian Gulf are shallow. All Iran's got to do is sink a few ships here, and this strait's blocked, and they got all kind of firepower. See, they got it surrounded on all sides. They got all kind of firepower arrayed around there. Iran can totally block all traffic in and out of the Strait of Hormuz. This isn't the worst thing. Now, this is what a lot of other channels focus on as being the worst thing. No, this is a thing. This is an item. This could shut down transportation of 20% of petroleum in the world market today. In a time when gas from Russia is being shuttered, to shut this down too, when our own side has unilaterally stood down a lot of petroleum production, which is the first thing that started raising our energy cost. This would be catastrophic to the price of oil. The price of oil would shoot straight through the ceiling, and all of the costs associated with everything that uses energy, which is everything we know, would be shooting up. It would be extremely inflationary. It would be that with the food problems we're having, it would really shatter the world economy like an egg. So that's the economic side of it. And maybe for the world, that is the worst thing. Now, for the United States, we actually don't get that much energy from this area. We're producing our own energy.
Greg, let me ask a quick question real quick about the Persian Gulf. How many boats and vessels go through there a day approximately? Do you know?
I don't know that. I could look it up. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Oh, that's okay.
It's probably very, we were real sensitive to that back in the first, when Reagan was president. We had a lot of hostilities there when Reagan was president, if you might recall. And it looks like it may chime up again, but it's a good bit of traffic. It's fully 20% of the world's oil supply. It's not trivial at all.
Yeah, it's saying an estimated 18 to 20 million barrels of oil pass through the strait every day.
Yeah. So, and this is everything in Saudi Arabia is being produced on this side over here. You got Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, even Iran. All the oil from all these countries is coming through here. Qatar, Bahrain, all the oil from all these nations comes through here. So several nations would be held hostage to this. And the users on the other side. The United States are in a war with Iran. Iran has already said if they're in a war with us, they would take down our power grid. It's in their doctrine. It's in their written military doctrine. And somebody once told, we had a study here in the United States, it's public, that said that there were 9 critical substations, power substations, taken down. The cascading failures would cause our entire power grid to fail. This was told to the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And his reply was, I've got sleeper cells in America. We've already got 20 of them targeted. This was years ago. But I tell you what, we now know that streaming across, I heard a guy who was involved in border security speaking at another teleconference I was on, one of my Secure the Grid teleconferences that I attend. He said that there are people from 150 nations coming across our southern border right now. It's not just Mexicans and Guatemalans and people from Central America. A lot of people are coming from China and Iran and places like that. So when open your doors wide open, just let anybody in. You don't know what's coming in. And that's a security threat. So we don't know who else is getting in. We don't know what kind of sleeper cells are being built, what they're being arrayed to. These guys are just waiting for the magical moment for somebody to say go, and it could break loose really bad. Not to mention, I did mention in a previous video that my friend Stacy Zivicki had a dream of an attack coming from Venezuela. And as you know, Iran sources missiles to Venezuela, lots of them. And to boot, the next month there is a joint exercise in Venezuela with China, Russia, Iran, and 10 other nations, of which I think North Korea is one of them. Any of those countries could be a source of an attack like she envisioned. So it's really strange. Now, maybe they'll just be setting things up for it. They don't mean it's going to come next month. They have had some intel that suggested that China was going to try to hit Taiwan by October. Now, I don't know. It could fit with all these other things going on. So
would Iran be like the black swan? Would it be the wild card?
it could be. It could be. But just look at it. Even with Russia, Russia's kind of threatening Finland. Here's the other thing. Think about this. Putin just traveled to Iran. Iran made a deal to sell drones to Russia to use against Ukraine, but the other person in that meeting was Erdogan, president of Turkey, who sells drones to Ukraine to fight the Russians. Is that weird? And they were all shaking hands like some big bro fest. Recep Erdogan, Vladimir Putin, and the president of Iran were all chummy together. Iran made a deal to sell drones to Russia. Russia's made a deal to supply a pipeline to Iran. But here's another thing: all this slowdown in the pipeline business from Russia, some of it may be due to this turbine they've got from Canada. What a lot of people don't realize is that these pipelines from Russia are in the permafrost. I lived in Alaska. I'm gonna tell you something. The permafrost up there moves. It exerts a lot of pressure, and these pipelines also, if they're not pumping gas, have the pressure to them. And when the Berlin Wall fell, they had a cut in their gas supplies. They lost a lot of their gas lines due to the permafrost. It took American companies to go in and fix it. It took them years to get it all fixed. These companies have left Russia. They're not coming back in. And Russians don't have the expertise really to repair their own pipelines. You may see a permanent loss in gas and oil supplies from, or at least a permanent degradation or a permanent loss in supplies shipped from Russia. So we may be facing a real energy crisis here. But think about it. We're also looking at our country maybe being attacked from things that would take out our power grid. But, the whole world could come unglued at once. All these people may be waiting on something like this to happen so that, America's attention gets spread less thin, because if we want to protect Taiwan, we've got to protect Guam, which is American territory with 750,000 U.S. citizens there. We've got to protect Guam. We got treaties with Japan, South Korea. We've got this agreement with Israel vis-a-vis Iran. We've been covering, we're in NATO. It's getting interesting. Another odd thing, though, is it might get harder for Russia because even though Russia has appointed a president of Chechnya who's loyal to Putin, the people in Chechnya are not. And there's looks like some of them are starting to rebel. They want to open up an insurgency within Russia for another Chechen rebellion now that Russian troops are away minding Ukraine. So things are getting interesting. We're obviously wars spring up all over the place. This could be the year. This fall might be the autumn war. I don't know. I hope it's wrong.
Yeah, and me too. And you're putting into perspective the difference in terrain and the size. I mean, Iran is a lot bigger than Iraq. I didn't realize that, but also the question I would ask you then with the Iran situation is, if it was to happen, who would spearhead the blow against the U.S.? Would it be Iran, or would they be next?
I think from our standpoint, the strategy would be to attack their nuclear power plants, their nuclear production facilities. I don't think we at all would plan to go in and try to take over and occupy Iran. I don't think we can do it. I don't even think it's in the plans. It would be a devastating war to try to take Iran. Devastating. And it wouldn't, and our accomplishments could be accomplished, but just by knocking out their plants until such time as they rebuilt them. It'd be a temporary fix because they can turn around and do it all over again. I'm not sure I'm really answering your question, but what their response would probably, if they didn't have nukes to respond with, they might prompt allies to respond to us, like North Korea, Russia. Now, see, Russia's getting in a stronger alliance with Iran. Russia might do something, or give Iran something to work with. They might even supply needs. But especially if they were to use them from an undescript location where nobody could tell where it came from, like offshore of Venezuela. If you fire something offshore of Venezuela and it explodes at altitude, you got no ground trace. You don't even know. If you have a nuke blow up on the ground, you can tell where it came from by looking at the isotopes. If it happens in space, you don't know. If it's fired from Venezuela, you don't even see it coming. So I could take down our grid, but with all the sleeper cells they got in America, they could do a lot of damage to this country, especially if they take down our grid by taking out our substations. As the Metcalf station got hit on April 16, 2013, near San Jose, California. That's the kind of things we've got to be concerned with. So this is a real threat, Rex. And I hope we don't see this happen, but we just got to be mindful. If we just jump into Iran, it's not going to be a cakewalk, and there's going to be consequences. There's going to be blowback. So the whole idea of, well, we can just do this, we can do that, and that'll be all she wrote. We might have played a game like that with Afghanistan. We might have played that game with Iran, with Iraq, but not Iran. See, now, Afghanistan's a mountainous country too. They didn't have anything of a military that was to brag of. They do now. We've equipped them pretty well. But Iran has a very sophisticated military. They can launch satellites. They can build. They got nuclear power plants. Iranians are really smart people. Traditionally, they're not. Ethnically, the Persian people. Iraq, hey, this was just a flat skateboard here on that flat sidewalk. Easy access compared to this. So we can't go into Iran and do what we did in Iraq. And I don't think anybody's got that in their head, not any serious military planners. But what they might do, as I said, is they might do airstrikes and try to take out key facilities. But there we go for Iran's command and control, sure. They would have to do that. So there would be airstrikes, missile strikes, an occupation.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, Greg. I was going to ask, who do you think, if there was going to be a strike on the U.S., who do you think would be the first nation, or what nation do you think would be the first one to do it?
Wow. Depends on who we hit first. I mean, Iran would do it if we hit them. If we hit them, they would hit us with at least sleeper cells. If otherwise, I think China is more likely next, because China is hinted that they would take that if they attack Taiwan, they're going to attack Guam. Guam is U.S. territory, has U.S. citizens, and the natives there are U.S. citizens. And we have a large military presence in Guam. Now, we see the Ukraine wars going on. We could get into it with Russia here. Russia's threatened to nuke us. Gosh, they've been threatening to nuke the United States. They've been threatening to nuke everybody over Iran. Who knows? They could lose it, especially if they could start going into Baltic republics or Poland. They're concerned about the bridge to Crimea getting hit by because missiles from the United States. I've said from way back, I had this on the video 3 years ago, that if we tried to take Crimea from Russia, it would be a nuke war because their naval bases there. I do not see Russia giving that up. Do not see that for a minute. So the world is a powder keg right now, and it's getting more dangerous. The tempers are flaming, and nobody's got the good sense or the diplomacy to try to figure out how to stop this mess. That's the sad part. I think we need some good diplomacy right here between Ukraine and Russia. And I think there's a lot of unrealistic expectations on the side of the Ukrainians and the Russians both. And I think it's got the world at risk. I really think that China is really messing up. I'll be honest. China doesn't have a deep blue water navy. I mean, they've got the largest navy in the world, but it's really a first island chain type navy, which would give them supremacy near home. But one of the reasons China's been allowed to prosper and do so well is because our Navy has protected world trade for the last umpty-dump years, and that's done China more good than anything. But they're not very grateful for that. Now they're wanting to take things. So Taiwan would be a beachhead in which they could reach out and do a lot of other things. So there's Guam's over here. Be beachhead to strike out from the first island chain. Right now, it kind of holds them in, and so they really want Taiwan from a military strategic standpoint. We could zoom in here on Guam. Anderson Air Force Base there. We've got a lot of military people here on. A lot of U.S. servicemen.
So if they're going into Taiwan, you think they're going to get Guam at the same time? They're going to go for both?
That's what they're saying. Now look at all these bases here.
Oh yeah, Guam's filled with military bases.
Yeah, it's Guam's. Guam's kind of like a big aircraft carrier. It's a beautiful island. It's got beautiful island, beautiful people there. It'd be a shame to see them decimated by the missiles from China. China's got a whole branch of the military called the Rocket Force. We got an Air Force, they got a Rocket Force.
Now, I've got a friend, Bob Kudla, Marine, and we've talked about Taiwan before, and he had brought up Taiwan has thousands of missiles pointing towards China.
They both have thousands of missiles, so it would be a missile fest at first. I think there'd be a lot of missiles fired or a blockade. It might be that China would just put a blockade around the island for some time before they would try to do a landing party. Because if they blockaded them for long enough, they might starve them out.
Jeez.
Might even, really and truly, China would like to keep the chip making plants in Taiwan intact. But Taiwanese will threaten to destroy them if we let China have them. Now, here's the good news. If we can stay out of World War, if we can somehow not get into war with China, Russia, and maybe even Iran, if somehow we can prevent these full-fledged wars, the demographics of Russia and China is that both nations imploding. Russia, if they conquered all of Europe, they'd lose it. In fact, Russia probably won't be able to maintain, even if they didn't get attacked by China, they probably won't be able to maintain Siberia. The native peoples will probably just rise up and take their own land. Russia will do good to maintain their own country because their demographics are collapsing. Russia's not invested in educating their people. Russia has not done a lot of the things that they need to do to maintain themselves. Their population is imploding really fast. They're getting old in a hurry. They're not going to have the manpower to do any of this stuff. And the population in China, it could be half what it is today by the year 2060. Russia's in the same kind of boat. Both these countries are on the verge of a major collapse. China has got a huge real estate market collapse going on right now, huge economic collapse. China's also got a lot of the factories shut down. A lot of companies are leaving China. China thrived because it used to have the cheapest labor, but China's labor cost has gone up 16 times in the last several years. Not only that, they have to import all their energy. It's now cheaper to produce goods in the United States than it is in China. So China's lost their edge. China's best days are already behind it. That may be why they would want to lash out now while they still got a chance. And in fact, a lot of people think that's why Russia's lashed out while they still got a chance. And it's this whole idea of filling these gaps that's got NATO and countries worried. That's why they're putting up all the defense into Ukraine. That's the reason America's going along with it, because we're part of NATO. That's why they're investing so much in Ukraine, is because they're willing to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian or Ukrainians. But they're hoping to stop Russia here, because if we don't, they fear that Russia will just keep going and allied with Belarus, will just take the Baltics and go into Poland and other areas. And be quite frank, Ukraine's got a better army than most of the rest of NATO. So if Russia can get through NATO, get through here, they can take some of these other countries if we don't get into full-scale nuclear war. And if we do, Russia's better prepared for that than any country. They've got underground bunkers, they got underground cities, stuff that take tens of thousands of people. Moscow's got a huge underground bunker to cover its population. They've got thousands of anti-missile systems around the country. Russia, they cried and moaned about ours, had their own all along. So Russia is better prepared for a nuclear war than anybody. So I hope we don't see this, but if we can avoid war, if we could talk to them and say, look, Russia, look, Vladimir, really, you're going down a self-defeating rabbit hole here. You're going to create so much animosity against your country that you'll never climb back out, especially if you go into nuclear war against the world. Then like that, the rest of the survivors in these other nations will come in and eradicate your people. They would. That's what would happen. The survivors of nations over here, they'd remember it. And one day they would march on Moscow, and they would probably not leave a single person alive. So in the long run, it would not serve Russia to launch a nuclear war from that standpoint. But they're probably not thinking that long term. China, I don't know who would take China eventually. Now, the countries that actually have the best demographics in terms of long-term population are actually down here, Southeast Asia, India. India's going to be a superpower. Actually, Iran might be a superpower coming up. Iran's got a lot of Turkey. The dreams of being a superpower, but their economics is messed up. And Erdogan plays both sides against each other. You know, he spoke, this is a NATO nation. Here we got a head of a NATO nation just went to Iran and to meet with Vladimir Putin and the head of Iran. So he's not a popular NATO nation. I've even questioned, should the United States be in NATO? And I think maybe in the long run, really only reason that the United States might ought to stay in NATO is that when Russia does break up, somebody's got to go in and grab all the nukes before they wind up in terrorist hands. Because eventually Russia will fall apart. China will fall apart. And I'm expecting that to happen within just a few decades, probably, maybe even just 20 years. We could see it in our lifetimes. A deeper fall than what they had in 91. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the population is dropping like a rock, and they're not well trained. Their equipment's in bad shape. They don't have the basis for the economy. What I said about their oil wells earlier don't bode well from them. But, you know, what's the world going to go through in the meantime? If everybody decided to have a love fest right now, no more fighting, let's all get together and hug and kiss. We've wrecked the harvest for next year. We're eating last year's harvest. We might be able to get some grain out of Ukraine, but guess what? They're not planted as much because they've been getting bombed and shelled. Farmers harvesting have found themselves a target of shelling. Fields have been burnt. Fertilizer has not been available worldwide. Even here in the United States, we won't starve, but the crops are. I've seen crops that don't look nearly like they're looking really pitiful this year. Some of them are. Some look good, some don't. Depends on how much the farmer is willing to invest in fertilizer.
If you want to listen to this podcast in full, which I know you do, go over to leakproject.com. We do live shows every day. They're always free, unedited, uncensored. You can ask the guest and myself questions. If you miss the live shows, check out our archives. Over 4,000 videos and audio podcasts, only available at leakproject.com. Be the change you want to see, everybody. I'll see you over at Leak Project, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Pyne Time Lord.